All right, so we will explore mood, tone, and imagery in the machine stops. So for the mood, wait, I didn't want to say dark and dull. Our mood is what we as the reader feel. All right. So if you were to say the story was boring, you could say dull, a mood, a dull. You want to avoid um not I don't care, like whatever you want to say is it's your choice. But if a teacher assigns your story, right? You should assume that the teacher probably likes it. Unless they say otherwise. So you would want to avoid identifying the mood as boring. We could use like dull or uninviting. But wait. So when I first started reading this, I was a little disturbed to open in this type of setting. I felt bad for Vashti. I'm disturbed. So other other if you looked up mood of the machine stops, it says that it has a happy mood at the beginning, but I would argue with that. That's Google's AI. Don't trust it. Um, I would say our mood, I feel disturbed. And I would also say I'm saddened. I want to say that this is depressing. And if I was going to explain why, part one of the story opens with we can say, with a solemn and depressing mood. The reader is left feeling pity for Vashti and the life the lifestyle she leads. Also, like her physical is not good. And pity for the for Vashti and her lifestyle. And her lifestyle. All right. Then as a mother, Vashti's relationship with her son is very depressing. Um, to have this mother be like irritated and to think that society could get to a place where parents and their kids don't um interact or really anyone interacts. You could say it's sad or depressing. And then we could also maybe say eccentric or strange for the tone. So now we're going to the tone. Um, we could say matter of fact. Um, I would have said dull. He's descriptive, but in a way where he's telling us just what we need to know. And in a way, there's not any bright and action packed scenes being described here. So dull would probably be the way you could go. We'll say dark and dull because the setting is repeatedly described as dusty, brown, and lacking in originality. Like everything, well, maybe not originality, because he, by originality, I want to mean like everything is exactly the same. There's nothing different. There's not a big building with bright lights. There's not paintings or I mean, there's buttons and stuff that comes out, but it's just a plain room with a radiant light. That's not, when we say lack originality, we could say like everything's the same everywhere, which gives it that dull type of tone. And tone would be the author's tone of voice or how we would picture him telling this story. Another tone that we could use is apocalyptic, but that will be towards the end. And I will, well, here, we'll show you. So in the end, and part 3, when we get to not homelessness, wait, this would be, yes, okay. So we're in homelessness. Vashti's going to decide to leave. This would be the part where you could say things start to get, the tone and the mood are both apocalyptic, which just means coming to an end. People who complained were debarred. Oh, this is when the people aren't allowed their respirators anymore. So the respirators were done away with. You could say authoritarian here when they're going to take um, people's right to go to the earth. And wait, we have when Vashti leaves, basically, I'll show you the scene. She decides to leave when everything in the machine has broken. So the music's not working, the air's barely working, the bed's not coming out. Um, and there came a day when the whole world in Sumatra, in Wessex, and the innumerable cities in Courland and Brazil, the beds, when summoned by their tired owners, failed to appear. It may seem a ludicrous matter, but from it we may date the collapse of humanity. So that could be the apocalyptic. And when she's going to leave, all of the people are basically just crawling. People at any time repelled her. And these were nightmares from her worst dreams. People were crawling about. People were screaming, whimpering, gasping for breath, touching each other, vanishing in the dark, and ever and anon being pushed off the platform onto live rail. Uh-oh, that's not good. Wait, and I want this quote because we can use this quote when we go into imagery. The part where they are all out screaming and whimpering here. I'll put it for imagery. And if you, imagery is just what we see, smell, feel, hear. When Vashti exits the machine in part 3, the author uses imagery to describe the screams and moans of the people. The reader can see large masses crawling on the ground, gasping for breath. Imagery. There's a lot of imagery. We can say anytime they're talking about what you can see or what you can hear. Kuno's experience on the Earth's surface. That is 100% imagery. So if you're looking for examples of imagery, when Vashti goes and talks to Kuno, all of this, and he said, let's see, when he can't breathe, it was easy at first. The mortar had somehow rotted. The whole story where Kuno's getting out of the machine, you could say that this is an example of imagery. As I climbed, the rough edges cut through my gloves, and so that my hands bled. That's a really good example of imagery because you can feel his hands hurting, and you could also say you can see the blood. So, and the humming of the machine, you can hear the machine humming. Any other times you see the machine hums, you could use that as an example of imagery for sure. And let's see, him describing the cities. Well, this was from before, saying, I could think of nothing but these ventilation shafts. Had they been destroyed by all the food tubes and medicine tubes and music tubes? This is just his inner thoughts, or his dialogue. So that That's not the best example of imagery. Let's see. Anytime when she gets there, you could say the buttons, the knobs, the reading desk with the book, the temperature, the atmosphere, the illumination were all the same. So if I was going to say in part 2 uses imagery to describe Kuno's room in comparison with Vashti's. Kuno, or I'll say Forster, utilizes imagery when Kuno talks about his journey to the surface. Like, we'll leave it. All right. So that would be your examples there. So, which you wanted to add something. He cut his hands. You can feel his hands hurt. He's bleeding. You can see the blood. You can hear the hum. And her in the cabin, we could say there were 8 of them. Her describing this is sort of some imagery because you can hear them talking. No ideas here. And then you can see the 8 or 10 young males. And Vashti's the only one. Physical, it says, avoiding one another with an almost physical repulsion and longing to be once more under the surface of the earth. So I guess you could say the imagery is you can see them all sitting there awkwardly as in the airship, and you could say, and you hear their conversation. That would be imagery. You would want to have at least 2 senses for it to be a good example of imagery. So that's mood, tone, and imagery. And remember, with the mood, the mood is your interpretation. So whenever you feel yourself happy or you feel yourself depressed reading something, or if you say like something you're reading and you're like, wow, that's messed up, you could say, the mood was disturbing. Throughout the story, throughout the story, the mood was disturbing due to the mass casualties caused by the stopping of the machine. The ending, super. Anyway, and then I could say, describe repeatedly as dusty and brown. All right. So then, if I was gonna say the apocalyptic one, Forrester's tone becomes increasingly apocalyptic. Apocalyptic. I'm not gonna spell this right away. Apocalyptic. As the story progresses and the latent issues of the machine are revealed. Latent means hidden. So the machine throughout the story, they're going to say they're going to use latent problems, latency. That just means stuff is wrong and it's not revealed to the general public yet.